Okay, the following presentation will be a critical analysis of the poem The Lake Isle of Innisfree by W.B. Yeats. I'll begin this presentation with a reading of the poem, followed by my analysis. I will arise and go now, and go to Innisfree, and a small cabin build there, of clay and wattles made. 9 bean rows will I have there, a hive for the honey bee, and live alone in the bee-loud glade. And I shall have some peace there, for peace comes dropping slow, dropping from the vales of the morning to where the cricket sings. There midnight's all a glimmer, and noon a purple glow, and evening's full of the linnet's wings. I will arise and go now, for always night and day I hear lake water lapping with low sounds by the shore, while I stand on the roadway or on the pavement's gray, I hear it in the deep heart's core. Okay, now when you look at this poem in its entirety, and knowing that the author wrote this while living in London, you can sense the tension he creates as he moves from one line to the next. Even though he never writes of or mentions London in this poem, you can feel his disdain. As he writes longingly of the place he yearns for, he is contrasting this with the place he wants to leave. His description of his island oasis, with its tranquility and solitude, is like a list of everything that is missing in London, where the boundaries of the city are like the shoreline on his island of despair. Okay, so let's take a closer look at this poem. First, let's start with the title, since it is a real place that exists in Lothgill, Ireland. The name Innisfree translates to Heather Island, and was a place very familiar to the author. I feel it is important to note here that the island is the topic of the poem, while the lake acts like a buffer zone that separates the author's sanctuary from the rest of the world. The rhyme scheme is in ABAB format, with a mood that is very calming and harmonious with nature. The meter changes from hexameter in the first 3 lines of each stanza to tetrameter in the 4th line of each stanza. And the rhyme scheme and meter together help give the reading of this poem a hypnotic effect, which works well with the tranquil content of the poem. Okay, in the very first line, the author wastes no time escaping the grasp of the city. Even though he is a willing prisoner of city life, he appears to show his disdain for the city by boldly stating that he can leave its grasp at any time. Even if the city still holds his physical body prisoner within its boundaries, he is still free to arise and go in his mind and escape the noise and chaos of a place that allows him no sanctuary. In the second line, we again see the disdain for modern city living, where tall buildings and people are crowded together, and pavement and brick take up all of the free space. In stark contrast to this is a small cabin of simple design, providing nothing but the basics, yet it provides the author with everything he longs for. This third line shows that this oasis wasn't just a passing thought, and that the author even planned for his own sustenance, in addition to providing the bees, which would be needed to pollinate the crops that would sustain him. Again, this is in contrast to the people living in the city, who had very little thought or knowledge about where their food came from that was bought off the shelf. And the first stanza ends showing how content the author is with the world he has created. He has shelter, food, and above all else, solitude. The contrast here is that he finds peace and serenity in the buzz of excitement as numerous bees go about their chores. But the many sounds of the city that blend together in a buzz of excitement is nothing but distracting to the author. And the first two lines of the middle stanza show explicitly what the author is after, which is peace. The contrast here is that you can find peace in the city, but it is a scattered peace, or a shattered peace, catching a brief snippet whenever or wherever you can. It's quick to come and just as quick to leave. But at Innisfree, the peace comes dropping slow. It is all-encompassing and slowly saturates your soul. From the first hint of sunrise that slowly burns away that blanket of morning haze, until the songs of cricket hearken the night. And the third line continues with the visual imagery of Innisfree, with its nights all aglimmer, which I'm sure refers to the starry nights, whereas only the brightest stars are seen in the night sky of the city. It's interesting that the author uses 12 o'clock for his reference to night and day, when so often these two times are referenced by sunrise and sunset instead of midnight and noon. And the middle stanza ends with the sky filled with birds on wing, heading to wherever they will rest for the night, silhouetted against the setting sun. I like the contrast between this and the end of a city day, where people are noisily and hurriedly making their way home at the end of another dreary workday. In the final stanza, again the author stating he will arise and go, but this time there feels a finality to his statement. Everything previous to this stanza was a description of what his oasis would look like, and now that his oasis is complete, its solitude and tranquility are forever calling to him, night and day, day and night. The low sound of water lapping at the shore is like a steady heartbeat, a rhythmic beckoning to come be a part of the landscape of his desires. In the final part of this poem, the author once again showing his dislike of the city as he describes himself standing in the street, the dull, colorless, drab and dreary city street, where inspiration lies dormant, and all that excites and tortures his soul is the ever-present calling of his magical oasis, with promises of the solitude and serenity that he desperately craves.